Hello and welcome to Film Lovers. I'm Sonny Chung. I talk to people who work in the film industry and who are also avid film lovers. Today we're being rejoined by a guest we've had on before, Brad Watson. Hi, Brad.
Hi, how you doing?
It's been a while, hasn't it?
Yes, sorry about that. Yeah.
No, it's all right. What have you been up to? Since it was before Christmas, I think, that we spoke.
Yeah, it was. I think it was before I started shooting my new movie, which is shot just before Christmas. Yeah. So yeah, did that, shot that, and then obviously for the first part of this year, I was in post production. Well, I was cutting it and delivered my cut in March, and then it's been VFX and all that stuff happening. In the meantime, I've been editing other projects and other movies that people have got me involved with. But literally the end of last week, literally on Friday, just gone, I signed off on the final mix and the final
awesome.
grade on it. So it's all done now. So it's now getting processed to be delivered to Saban, who are distributing it. They're distributing in the US, I think in the UK, but I'm not 100% sure yet. I don't know but I don't know what their plan is yet. So I don't know when it will be out, but it's ready to go. So. Hello. Oh, hello.
That's all right. Wait, can you repeat? So, what is the title of your film? Has it been given a title yet?
Yes, it's been officially called The Siege.
Okay.
Which is a bit of a homage to John Carpenter, as a lot of my movies are.
Okay.
And because I believe the original title for Assault on Precinct 13 was The Siege. So that's what we went. It had various other titles, but when the distributors get involved and the sales agents get involved, we all have our idea. I had different ideas for the title, but eventually it became The Siege, and that's what's going to happen. The Siege is what we just finished. So that's what I've been up to.
Looking forward to seeing that.
I hope so. It's fun, I think.
Well, let me know when it's out and I can go see it.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so we're doing like a follow-up, and I guess it's kind of like a special, really. So what will your special be about?
Well, The Siege that I just made is basically an old school action movie. So you asked me to compile a top 5 of something. So I've done action movies, and the reason it sounds like a bit of a cop out because we all kind of grew up on action movies and stuff, but I also think it's interesting to discuss what is an action movie. I mean, where genres cross over. What make why? Because there are certain, because I was looking at I'd made my list and then I was like, I hope I haven't forgotten anything obvious. So
it's really annoying when that happens.
Absolutely, yeah. So this is just off the cuff list, but it's kind of how I felt. But I checked like online on the top action movies just to make sure I hadn't missed out something. And but then you're like looking, you're like, that I wouldn't call that an action movie. I wouldn't call that an action movie. I mean, they have Gladiator in there. I wouldn't call that an action. It's got action in it, but I wouldn't call it an action movie. Star Wars, I wouldn't call an action movie. I'd call it a sci-fi fantasy movie. But it's in the list for action movies. So that got me thinking. Well, it's like it's kind of interesting. What makes an action movie? And I think my list are pretty much standard action movies, but it's interesting how they do cross over or what is regarded as an action movie and what isn't. And
exactly.
Yeah, so that's what I thought would be kind of a fun conversation, really.
Awesome. Okay, we'll do that today. We did. Me and my friend Tom did one for New Year's Eve because we were all feeling bloated and ate too much food. So of course we got delusions in action. So we did one between ourselves. So what I'll do is I'll call this your favorite action film. So it's all you.
Yeah, my favorite. Yeah, because this is no sort of definitive list of anything. This is just
of course.
Brad's little what
exactly.
I'd like.
And we had the same as you, because actually I thought back to it and I was like thinking, well, a lot of the films we said that we really liked, they're kind of like, well, actually that really isn't an action film. There's just a bit of action in it, like you said. So it does cross over. So I'm interested to hear what your choices are. So is it a top 5 you've compiled?
I've done a top 5. I did some honourable mentions.
Okay, yeah, go for it. All right.
Like 5 that I can quickly run through.
Yeah. All right, then.
Yeah, so it's kind of like my top 10, but we'll do the last 5 sort of quickly.
Okay.
And in there, so that my last 5 would be Terminator 2, Mad Max Fury Road, and the one that's I think will be controversial is Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, which is a movie that gets ragged on a lot, and I understand kind of why, but I also think it's a fundamentally amazing achievement of action filmmaking. It's mind-blowingly good, and whenever I talk about that movie with people and they go, "Oh no, I don't like that as much as I do," I'm like, "What?" And I stick on the minecart chase sequence and I go, "Look at this! Just look at this! This is all done with stop motion models, and it's and usually I convince them. The Temple of Doom deserves way more love than it gets. That's just as a pure action movie, as a pure roller coaster movie. Then I've got Total Recall, which I think is one of the most original looking movies, and I always use that as an example when I slag off sort of the more recent sort of remakes culture, because when they did the Total Recall remake, it looked like like Minority Report kind of set a standard of look for futuristic movies that movies after that kept copying and copying and copying, and the Total Recall remake was just like one of those movies, whereas it's remaking a movie that is still to this day one of the most unique looking films ever made, and I was like, that just shows you that the heart isn't in these remakes. They produced this amazing, beautiful, sort of comic book looking movie into this generic thing. Anyway, so Total Recall, which I just think is just great fun, and I love the Total Recall is always the movie that you can, at the end of it, you can turn to people and go, so was it real or wasn't it? Was it a dream or wasn't it? And no one can be definitive about it. It's great. And then just out of my top 5, and it's a shame because I had this in my top 5 for ages, is the other Mad Max movie, Road Warrior, which I just think is a fundamentally, it's just a pure action movie that I think everyone should watch late at night, like at 1 o'clock in the morning. You sit and you watch that movie. It's just great. I love it.
So there your honourable mentions. Is that Mad Max? Was that the one with Charlize Theron and
Fury Road, which was in my mentions as well? So there's 2 Mad Max movies in my honourable mentions.
Oh, okay, that's all right.
Fury Road, which is the more recent one, and then Road Warrior, which is Mad Max 2. From 1982. So from the legendary year of 1982, which had so many movies. But,
all right then. So all right, we'll take it away then. So do you want to go from 5 down to number 1 being?
Yeah. Okay. Well, number 5 is, I think, what a lot of people do regard as the quintessential action movie, but it's Die Hard.
We've spoken about Die Hard so many times because we love that film, my friend Tom, and covered it in. We covered it in action, and we spoke about it some. I don't know. It was in another episode we did about mise en scène, so we were explaining the different codes of conventions and stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
So we were saying that's a typical narrative where it goes from A, B to C. So it's a beginning, middle, end. Whereas then there's other films that go completely, there is no narrative. It might start from the end. So we mentioned it then, and we mentioned it when I did it with my sisters for Christmas, because it is oddly a Christmas film as well.
I have gone on record saying it is a Christmas movie.
It is a Christmas film.
Yeah. Again, this is where genres cross over. It's like, what is it? What is it? A Christmas movie, isn't it? Yeah.
Exactly. Another time, but I never get bored of talking about Die Hard. So, so why is number 5 for you Die Hard?
So, it's I just think that for me, when I think of Die Hard, I just have this. To me, it's like a piece of art. The whole movie is like, I feel like it's like John McTiernan, the director, threw down this piece of clay and just molded this amazing sort of as you say, linear structure. Because the thing about it is, and it's absolutely to your point that you just said, is it's not like the movie that I just made is based on the kind of platform game style of action movie where you defeat that and then you go on to that and then you defeat that and you go on to that. And other than just building intensity, they could go in any order, really. Whereas with Die Hard, as you say, everything that happens follows on from what's just happened. All the action set pieces cannot be muddled up. It flows perfectly, and the character interactions and everything like that is.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yep. I've lost you.
Sorry.
Hello.
Yeah, no, the sound cut out, so I
dear.
missed some of what you were saying.
Oh,
go for that again. I'm so sorry. Just go for it again. It's all right. We'll just let it keep recording. It's fine.
Yeah,
not a problem.
Fine. Yeah.
Just let everyone know at home. I'm sorry. So go for it again. So what you said before, it sort of blanked out. Maybe.
So I'll say that. Yeah. That again, it's to your point that you were just talking about, that it has a flow to it, a narrative flow. Like I was saying, like the movie that I've just made is based on the old school sort of platform style of action movie. Like a platform computer game where you defeat one thing and you go on to the next and go on to the next. And other than you designing them just to be a bit more intense every time you do it, story wise you could put them in any order. Whereas with Die Hard, everything is cause and effect, and you can't mix it up. It's all moving in one direction, and every character choice is logical and based on what's just happened. And that's what I love about it. And they showed it at my local cinema at Christmas, and I took my family to see it because it's just like, if Die Hard's on the big screen, we've got to watch it.
I'm so jealous. I would have loved to see Die Hard on the big screen.
Yeah, I know, it's great. They won't. I think they'll do it again this year, but it's so for me, like it just has that narrative momentum that you were discussing. Plus also the visual style. John McTiernan has this way of moving the camera, this way of framing things and moving the camera, and shooting it in anamorphic, and the kind of camera moves he's doing were very, especially back in those days, very difficult to do with anamorphic lenses, and especially to keep the shallow focus and all that. But there's just a mechanics to the way the camera moves, and the motivation for certain camera moves that were quite revolutionary is quite a big word, but it was quite unusual at the time. And he was moving the camera a lot more like almost like French New Wave were doing things, and where they were making the camera a subjective character in the storytelling process. And he was doing that to an action movie, and it was kind of the first time that was really sort of done on that kind of scale. And I just think that it kind of just opened up the doors for this kind of new sort of visual language of action movies, and that's why I love it. Plus, you've got Alan Rickman being just amazing, and you've got
he's so good as a bad guy.
He's great. He's great, and you've got all there's so many cool things in it. My favorite line being Hans, booby, I'm your white knight. Thing. I just love all that stuff, and but it brilliantly sets up the bad guys. Even the clever thing about it is that it there's no big reveal as to the twist. I like the twist being that they're not terrorists; they're just just robbing the vaults. The twist is actually how they're going to rob the vaults. But the way you kind of realize that they're just robbers, they're not actually terrorists. Is very, I think, amusingly sort of revealed quite early on, and so that sort of happens. So they don't. So again, progression. They don't hold that back to to be clever. What's clever is because they think they're terrorists, the FBI come in and cut out all the power, and that means they can get in the vault. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant, you know. And never has a scene been more worthy of Ode to Joy being played than that scene than when they open up the vault. You know, it's so good.
I like the bit when the first time when John McClane and Hans Gruber become face to face.
Yeah,
and then Alan Rickman pretends he's an American civilian.
He's an Englishman playing a German, pretending to be American. I mean, he's brilliant. And
he's like, "What's the love?"
Yeah,
and it was saying, I saw this video about it actually, a Die Hard, like you know, making of, and it was saying that actually, the rest of the bad guys who are with him, they're not really speaking German; they're just speaking gibberish.
Yeah.
Exactly. So when they played in foreign, like Germany, for instance, they didn't understand.
What is this? Yeah, which kind of makes sense, you know, because it's almost like they're playing a part, you know, they're pretending to be terrorists. So you know, you can go with that. It's fine. But it's just But that moment that you talked about, where which they threw in kind of at the last minute, where to have Alan Rickman and Bruce Willis come face to face. But the moment that I love is the very beginning, where he first catches him and Alan Rickman looks at him, and there's just it feels like a minute of just what am I going to do? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? And then suddenly Alan Rickman just goes, oh no, you're one of them who does that thing. And I just think that moment is that they hold it just the right amount of time. It's perfect. But you're like, oh shit, what's going to happen? And then and then again to have Bruce Willis being smart, and you think he's being dumb, and he's not. He's being smart, and by handing him a gun. But you're like, why are you doing that? And then it's not got any. But the thing is he knows exactly what he's doing. I'm going to give you this gun, and if you're not who you say you are, you're going to try and kill me. And that's exactly what he does. So he reverses it. So simple, so brilliant, and that was just come up with at the last minute. That whole sequence. I mean, you know, these guys, they were firing on all cylinders. It was great, fantastic.
But it's like you said, he's so good. Like, because I mean, I guess at the beginning you kind of think he's not dumb, but you think, oh well, you know, he's just an average Joe. Yeah. And then you realise that actually, like, what are you doing, kind of thing along the way. And then you realise actually he knows what he's doing,
exactly,
and he knows what's going to happen as a result. So. My sisters always loved about that film the fact that he spends most of it running around with no shoes on.
Yeah, it's great. It's really, they strip him down. He's got nothing. They literally strip him down. You know, the vest became a cliche, but really that vest he's like, I'm just in my underwear, basically. I happen to have a pair of trousers on, but I'm in my underwear and I've got no shoes. And there's a great moment where he tries to nick one of the dead guy's shoes, and they're too small for him. It's like, oh God, you know. But again, absolutely. Everything. There's so many. Everything makes sense. It's like, of course, he would try and nick his shoes, and but yeah, it's brilliant. They really and because they talk about it, and I think anyone that's seen, like, you know, the movies that made us all that will know all this stuff. But the, you know, when they did the preview, it's great. It's great stuff. But the previews, they did that in the States, because then people only knew Bruce Willis from Moonlighting, which, by the way, is an insanely good show. They only knew him from that. And when they saw him running around in a vest and a machine gun, they just started laughing because it looked stupid. Yeah, it was like it wasn't Arnie, wasn't Stallone. It was Bruce flipping Willis from Moonlighting. That wise ass from Moonlighting in a vest and a machine gun, and it totally, you know, and people just started laughing. But what? But then when you see it in context, and you see that he's an average cop, he's a schmo, and yes, the reason he's like that is because he's getting changed, but the reason is we are throwing him out into this arena with nothing, literally nothing, but a vest and a pair of trousers, and and this average Joe has to survive on his wits, and he does. It's great. Love it.
It is great.
Yeah.
Wasn't that Alan Rickman's? Was that his debut film?
I believe it was his very first. Certainly his first Hollywood movie. I think. I think it might have been actually his first movie. I mean, he was big on the stage. Both.
And
I think he'd been big in Broadway as well, so he was known, in the States as well as here, but just from the stage. But I believe it's his first, certainly his first major role. And what a role! And he defined the villain of the 80s by doing that.
Oh yeah, he's so good. And also, I think that's, like you said, it sort of set off a trend of English guys playing the baddies, didn't it? That seemed.
Yes. I grew up. My entire childhood was thinking that only English people were evil because all the bad guys had the English accents. It was great, funny because I was like, yeah, they sound evil, so yeah, do it. It's great.
But he was so good as a bad guy, and then again as the Sheriff of Nottingham.
I'm gonna dig your heart out with a spoon. That's a movie that could easily be on this list. Is that an action movie? It's a Robin Hood movie. There's a lot of action. It's directed by what's his name? The other Kevin Reynolds, who did Waterworld and stuff. And it's great action.
Yeah. But there's so many, going back to Die Hard, there's so many iconic lines like the Yippee-ki-yay and what's the one where he sends down someone with a jumper?
Yo ho ho, now I have a machine gun.
Ho ho ho.
Now I have a machine gun, ho ho ho, yeah, that's it, yeah.
And the way he reads it, and Rickman reads it. So
and then in the score, he does these little jingle bells go in Michael Kamen's score. Great.
It's just really good fun, isn't it? I mean, there's actually bits of comedy that lurk through it. It's
like tonally, it really sets a standard for, and it's a tone that I think everyone has tried to achieve. Some successfully, some not, and even to this day, it's incredibly entertaining and very, very funny. It makes you laugh a lot, but the stakes are never in question. It's never too silly, and you believe everything, and all the action is intense, and you're scared for the lives of everyone that you care about, and and the balance of that tone, and I think it's kind of the pinnacle of that sort of comedy, not what you would call a comedy action, but an action movie with the comedy balanced perfectly. And and it's what can I say? It's wonderful, and I can't never stop. It's one of those movies. If it starts, I can't. Well, most of these movies are like that, but you just can't stop watching it when
But it just pops you in again, doesn't it? It's like one of those films that I watch over and over again, and I never get bored. But one more quick thing I want to say about it, and then we go on to number 4.
Yep.
On to your number 4 is that am I allowed to say the end? I would have thought by now I could.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, spoiler alert, everyone.
Yeah, but I'm sure by now, so don't this bit. But when Alan Rickman falls from the high building, I mean, this was way before CGI.
Yeah.
So they actually dropped him, didn't they? How far did they drop it to that?
Well, it was a big drop. I mean, they dropped him on. The shot was on a blue screen. Yeah, there was a blue screen mat below him, but it was like 20 feet or something, and it was a real drop because they really went. And what's brilliant, I mean, obviously the brilliance of that shot is they lied to Alan Rickman as to when they were going to drop him. So as he's coming around and McTiernan was going to count 3, 2, 1, drop. He told the guys to drop him on like 2. So he went 3, 2, and he went. So that look of shock on Alan Rickman's face as he goes, purely genuine. Yeah, absolutely. But also when you look at it, what's insanely good in that shot as well is the lighting is perfect, and the visual effects done by Richard Edlund, who's a hero of mine, and he did. And you watch as Alan Rickman falls, and the way the light catches him from the building that's not there, because it's just a blue screen mat below him, and that's all added in. but the way the light hits him as he goes, it's incredible. It's faultless. It looks perfect, and he really looks like a Alan Rickman falling to his death. It's amazing. Yeah,
it's an amazing. And the bad cop, the one that's annoying everyone, who was in Breakfast Club.
Yeah,
I hope that's not a hostage.
He's that guy. The guy's that's not a hostage. He's like he's that guy. Yeah. He's got to be surely he's got to be up there with William Atherton for a guy that's must be hated by everyone who grew up on
it. Yeah. Anyway, so let's go on to your number 4.
Okay, so number 4. So again, right. So what? This is a different genre, really, but it's a sequel to a movie that was a different genre. It's a sequel to what was really a horror movie, but
I know what you're gonna say.
James Cameron comes along and makes Aliens, and
I was gonna say Terminator 2.
Oh yeah, no. Terminator 2 was in my honorable mentions.
Okay, yeah.
Which I know is controversial because a lot of people regard that as one of the greatest, and I regard it as one of the. I mean, all these movies are great, and Terminator 2 is fantastic. But I've got 2 James Cameron movies in my top 5.
Okay.
He is the greatest action director of all time. But the first one is Aliens.
Terminator 2 is because I thought, well, actually, me and my friends spoke about this, where the first one was more kind of like a slasher film, and then the second one is.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it is the same. I mean, it's interesting the parallels there because Terminator is definitely a horror, and Terminator 2 being an action, and then the same thing. Alien is a horror, and Aliens is an action, but it's also got horror elements. I mean, it's still pretty horrific, and it was a movie. My dad came back when I was a little kid. He came back from the cinema, and he was like, it's a memory of mine, him coming back and him saying, "Oh my God, Brad, I can't wait for you to be old enough to see this movie. It was amazing."
Oh wow, you don't think that much.
Yeah. So but I think again it's difficult to explain to people how these movies were unlike anything that had gone before, and it's kind of of course it borrows a lot of the aesthetics from Aliens, but the marine, the space marine element of this had never been done, and it's certainly not like that. And when you watch this movie and suddenly, and again structurally, the way you get to know this, I mean, you basically got so many characters at the beginning, but the ones that are important for you to know, by the time they all start getting killed off, you know Hudson, Hicks, Vasquez, Apone, who's going to die, but you know a couple of them that do get taken out first of all, but that's good because you need to care about some of them. But the ragtag team that's left at the end of that initial sort of massacre, you know them all already. You know them, and it's so well done. And Cameron it's funny, everyone can have opinions about his scripts for Titanic and Avatar, but I think you look at Terminator, you look at Terminator 2, you look at Aliens, and for me as well, The Abyss, and the way characters are written and presented to you in amongst mayhem is second to none. I mean, he was a master at it, and you really, really cared about these characters. Even Hudson, who was who was kind of annoying, but when he goes, you are so upset, and it's so character wise, I think Aliens is, again, everyone tried to copy that afterwards, and everyone tried to copy that whole team on a mission sci-fi thing, and but no one can beat the original. It's a tour de force.
Yeah, really. And it was so original. I mean, we've spoken about this as well, my friend and I, in other episodes. But we were saying it was kind of like the very first film was the one that sort of set up a trend of actually, well, no, the main protagonist hero is a woman, because it was meant to be a man, wasn't it? And then in the end, they brought on Sigourney Weaver, and then I guess I think it's the second one as well. There's the showdown between her and the mother alien. So it's actually these two very strong female characters.
Absolutely, one of the greatest action scenes of all time between these two strong females.
And
which
was really helpful, I think, to do that.
Absolutely. But I was a kid at the time, and I was growing up with all this stuff, and it didn't seem, I didn't bat an eyelid at it. It wasn't a thing. It was, it just happened. I mean, Ripley was just the hero of the Alien movies, and that's how it was. And I think it's interesting when you look at Alien. I believe they definitely are. You've got Tom Skerritt playing the captain, who's probably the most well-known actor of them at the time, and so he's kind of set up as the hero, really. But then he's gone halfway through the movie, and then you're like, oh God, who's gonna be the hero now? And Ripley emerges as even though right at the start she was right to not let them on. They should have listened to her from the start, but she emerges as the hero, and quite rightly so, and it's great. And but then when because it's interesting, because when James Cameron first wrote the script, and they were moving along with the movie, apparently no one had actually approached Sigourney Weaver about being a mistake that I think she took to her advantage, for sure. I mean, stupid, but the character progression, and it's interesting. An interview I saw with Sigourney Weaver once, where I think it might have been one of the making DVDs, where she said subsequent people who have attempted to write Ripley as a character after James Cameron always wrote her as this, tough, sort of, almost a woman as a male type Marine, just yelling and screaming at people, and where she's like, no, but it's like, no, Ripley was never that. She wasn't that. She was forced into these situations where she had to rely on her skill and her wits and her physical strength and everything. But she was only ever yelling at people in the most extreme situations. She really didn't want to be there, and this is a thing for me with a lot of action movies. The more serious ones. I've got one coming up in a minute that hasn't quite got there, but where your protagonists, they don't want to be there. They really would rather be doing something else, and and I always cited the difference between the first Mission Impossible movie and the second Mission Impossible. Now, there's been loads since, and they've been brilliant. They're all great. But one of the reasons I hated the second Mission Impossible was because the character Tom Cruise was doing, he was diving off motorbikes and doing all these really amazing stuff, and just trying to look cool while he does it. Whereas when you watch the first one, he's hanging off that Eurostar. He doesn't want to be there. He'd really rather be there. He's like, holy Christ, what am I doing here? And I think that Ripley she doesn't want to be there, and she takes over because everyone's falling apart, because the Marines are badly organized and don't know what they're expecting, and she just takes over. And then when that moment where she takes over, and Gorman is like freaking out and can't control him, and she gets in, starts up, cranks up the tank. James Horner just kicks in the gear with the music, and it's like this is cinema. Doesn't get any better than this to me. It's like, this is fantastic. But my favorite moment in the whole movie, or rather, when I first watched it, this is one of those moments you can never recreate. Only when you watch the movie for the first time, is the moment where she runs out onto the platform, and Bishop is gone, and they're like, oh God, and you really think Bishop is gone, because Bishop has been set up to be, you're not sure whether he's, because of obviously Ian Holm's character in the first one as the robot, you're not sure if you can trust him, and he's gone, and they're left there, the whole place is blowing up around them, the alien queen's coming at them, the music rises, and then suddenly the ship just comes sharp behind. You hear Newt go, look, the music goes. Oh God, I remember. I can still remember to this day as a kid, just the goosebumps that went over me, going, oh my God. And this was, and the movie's not even over yet. We've still got the alien fight to happen at the end. The Queen fight, I think it's relentless. So the problem is that James Cameron's kind of he's a blessing and a curse, because he created this sort of 4-act structure to these action movies which when he does it is brilliant, because his stuff is great and you want more. So it's like the movie's over. But is it? No, it's not. Here's some more, and you want it, and it's great. And Aliens being an amazing example. The problem is that everyone starts to copy that and starts to do that. People who just aren't as good as him, and so you end up with movies that you just want to end, and they don't. And you're like, oh God, I want this to end now. But it's So my rule of thumb has always been, don't think stick to the 3-act structure, guys, unless you have a very good reason. But yeah, so Aliens is kind of it's almost too much. It's overwhelming as a movie, and it's just it's almost too much, and it's exhausting, and you feel exhausted at the end of it. But it's worth it, just because Get Away From Her, you bitch happens, and
of course. And coming back to the point where you said that she's the heroine, but she doesn't want to be in that situation. She doesn't want to be there.
Yeah.
There's the little girl, isn't it? So it's kind of like she is the mother of that girl in a weird way.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So you have to do things as a parent. You don't want to do. Do you know what I mean? That to save child.
Yeah. No, totally. And it's interesting because it's making her she becomes one of the ultimate action heroes in this movie, and mother as well. So it's not stripping her. It's not saying, all we need to do to make a female action hero is just write it like a man and let her, and just cast a woman. It's like, no, this is specific to that character being a female, being a woman, and if you know the extended edition, being a mother as well, and it's crucial for that entire ending of the movie to happen, and and that's it's brilliant, and I love that.
Yeah, no, definitely. I remember reading a funny review someone posted on social media about the first Alien film. So apparently this guy posted it on his Twitter, and it showed up in Facebook, whatever. And he does, he's a film critic, he writes reviews. And for some reason, he couldn't do one on Alien, so he got his wife to do it. And his wife wrote, Alien is a film where nobody listens to the smart woman. They all die except for the smart woman and her cat.
Yeah.
4 stars.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
It's like, why ramble on for ages?
Exactly. You boil down Alien to its essence. It's no one listened to a smart woman, so they all died.
Exactly. I think that was for the first one. I'm not sure if it was but
it's brilliant. But it's done in a way that it's because you can look at these things, and it's certainly empowering for females to see a character like that who is smart but she's human as well, and she's not right all the time, but also it was done in a way that it wasn't writing was just so good back then. They wrote these characters and it felt organic and it felt real. You didn't feel like there was an agenda to go, we must have a female be the hero here. No, it just felt right. It was just right, and she was in the position to make that call of no, I don't want quarantine rules state that you can't come on, but then she gets overruled by everyone, and it could have been anyone that did that, and it's like who then is set on the back foot for the whole movie as the one that people blame for for not or thinking that they would happy to leave Kane to die outside. So it separates her from the group immediately. So it's not by virtue of being a female or a woman that does that. It's her actions do it all, and it's just done organically, and it's great, and you go with it, and you see the dynamics just play out as they should, with good writing and great performances, and hence, yeah, and it's great. I grew up with Ripley as one of my heroes. She's fantastic.
And she became a bit of a sex icon, I'd imagine, to a lot of teenage boys, especially
there. Yeah, I mean, there is the scene at the end of Aliens, but I'm not saying that's seared into my adolescent brain, but
there must have been a surge in those knickers when she wore them.
She modelled them very well.
Anyway, is there anything else you want to say about Aliens before you crack on to number 3?
No, I mean, I think I've blurbed it all out in a million. I mean, I could talk about it. I could talk about it for ages. I mean, there's so
I know. Same. All right, well, let's go on to your number. Let's go on to number 3.
So my number 3 is, and again, this is kind of in the same genre, but this is what I consider one of the, along with Back to the Future, I consider as one of the most perfectly structured movies of all time. And it's kind of a superhero movie, but it isn't, and it's RoboCop.
Okay. Why RoboCop?
Because I think RoboCop is such a unique film, and the tone of it is, I mean, for me, I think the tone is mind blowing. If anyone tried to recreate that tone, I don't know how you would do it. It's hence they didn't even bother when they did the remake. It's like we can't do that. It's so, I think, it's so funny. I mean, it is a comedy, really. It's a satire. Again, is it an action movie or is it a satire? It's both. Is it an action movie or is it sci-fi? It's both. And but again, it's I think it does the superhero origin story pretty much better than everything other than Donna's Superman the movie. I think it's the best origin story of a superhero ever. But also the action is brilliant. Paul Verhoeven is, I call it, like, there's a small group of directors that I consider the greatest action directors, and Paul Verhoeven is totally up there because of Total Recall, because of this movie, because of Starship Troopers. But but when you watch anything, I mean, I remember watching like a Basic Instinct that he directed, and there was this one scene where a car drives at Michael Douglas, and Michael Douglas just leaps out of the way of it over another car. But it's done in this amazing tracking, jibbing shot that just comes around. Yeah, and I'm just like, that's Paul Verhoeven. He's not confining himself to genre. He's not going, I'm doing a slow burn thriller here, so I can't pull out. No, he goes action right at that moment. It's fantastic. I think that all the action in RoboCop, because again, we talk about genre, we talk about that. What is, I consider an action movie, or when I'm thinking about it in this list, to me it's where the action is part of the art of the story. Like we talk about Gladiator, which has some great action in it, but the action isn't the DNA of it. It's not like how the action is done is what that movie's about. Whereas these movies, the action is part of the DNA, and how the action is executed is all part of what makes the movie so good. That's why I class some as action and some not. And RoboCop, for me, 100%, is the action is just, it's not as flashy as Die Hard, and it's not as intense as Aliens, but it's kind of so coolly captured, and so, and I don't want to use the word basic, but to me it's one of the most great examples of just letting the action play out the way it needs to play out, and cutting it the way it needs to be cut. And if you are engaged with the story and you're engaged with the characters, then the action is all the more intense. And I think that the finale of RoboCop at that steel plant, that whole chase sequence going on there, is, to me, as a kid, it got my heart pumping, and I was thought, this is just wonderful. And again, I look back at it as a filmmaker and analyze it. It's like there's nothing really special happening here in terms of the way it's playing out. But I just remember you're just so into it, and you're so on RoboCop's side at that point. You had this spectacular sequence where he's betrayed by his own police force, apart from the odd few, and it's harrowing and heartbreaking when they're shooting at him and he's crawling along trying to get away from him, and Paul Verhoeven has, he said very unsubtly, it's a Christ story, this is the execution, this is him being crucified, by the people that he trusted, and he does all that, and I think that at that point, I think up until that point, you're engaged with the story, because the brilliant thing about it, and what's so stupid about the remake is that he's completely sentient and he knows what's going on. The heart of RoboCop, and it is a movie with a massive heart, and I think most of these movies have that. Is the heart of it is the human inside the machine that's trying to get out, and that's the story, and it's never fully realized. He says Murphy at the end, but the line, one of the most heartbreaking lines in it, is when he says, I can't remember my family, but I can feel them, so it's like, so it's almost like the actual, brain function of the human is gone. That's now RoboCop, but the heart is still there. That undefinable element of a human being is in the machine, and that's what it feels. And it's brilliant. It's so simple and it's so wonderfully, but the structure of it is, as I said, I think this and Back to the Future are the two greatest structured movies ever made. If you want 3-act structure, boom, 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 it's just. It's tight, it's and I really get a kick out of movies that work that way. They're so well structured that you sit there and it plays out and it's over, and you're like, the rhythm of that was just in tune with my natural heartbeat. I don't know what it is, but I was just along for the ride every second, and RoboCop to me is just like that, and it's. But it's again, it's more simple action. It's obviously not as big a budget as all the others are on here. But the imagination, the dedication to the concept is what makes this movie work. Is they go for it, and they make you believe that that Peter Weller with this stupid chunk of metal on his head is our hero to follow. And when at the end he comes through, and when he turns and says Murphy at the end, and everyone cheers, it's the manipulation. You don't realize how you're being manipulated. You don't realize how brilliantly you're being manipulated to reach to that point. And that's why I love RoboCop. It's just a bloody good ride, and it's one of the best superhero movies ever made.
It's funny you mention that, because recently I resaw iRobot, and I hadn't seen it in years. And then I realized that actually, because you're talking about RoboCop, there was kind of like a string of those films, especially I think in the early 2000s, where technology kind of evolves and there's a human element to it. So like there was that, and then it kind of made me think, but then there was Minority Report, and then there was what was the other one with Stanley Kubrick was going to make
AI.
He died.
AI. Yeah.
So there was like a thing of those sort of artificial intelligence, but they have a human element. And I was one with Robin Williams, I remember. I can't remember that one.
Bicentennial Man.
Yeah, they all had a kind of element, but even though they were like robots or machines. And another one I can think of is the one in the 80s that was very popular. They had like Johnny Five. Do you remember those?
Yeah, Short Circuit.
Yeah. So there was kind of like a human element to it, and you're like, well, no, it's a robot, and it doesn't have. I guess in a weird way, it's a bit like Terminator in the first one, isn't it? Because but he has no human part of him, which is an interesting take on it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I mean, it is an interesting, it's a interesting subgenre, and it's again, it could be a top 10 you do with somebody else. I don't know, what's the best performance by an actor of it being an android or a cyborg? What is the best? And there's been some great ones. I mean, but Ian Holm really kicked it off with Alien. And obviously not including Hal, but obviously that was a voice that was there. But but there's so many good ones. Data from Star Trek: The Next Generation. Fascinating. This fascinating juxtaposition of what is machine and man is a it's a subgenre that's been played out many times, but there's so many ways you can do it, so many different ways you can play with it in so many different ways, and RoboCop is totally at the top of that list in terms of how it deals with that, because it doesn't make it's the point of the movie for sure, and and the satirical element of the movie is that his, once he dies, they own him. The corporation side and the privatization of the police and all that, and that's all the satirical side. But then out of that, you do get this very simple story of a machine that was a man, but it has to come to terms with that and has to find that balance between what was the man and what is now the machine. And that's why
First Order, really.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So. And I think that it's you can talk about sequels and all that, and I enjoy RoboCop 2 for what it is, because it's a bizarre movie, and I enjoy that. But really, you take the first RoboCop, and it's perfect. It's like that's it. He comes to terms with what he is, and that's it. That's the story. Done. Boom. But it's great, and all the swipes at 80s corporate culture and all that is hilarious, and those guys are great. The performances are so good. It's just there isn't a second of that movie that isn't incredibly entertaining in my view. Like it's just. As soon as it starts, you're like, what is this? And you're like, what the hell is this? And it's incredible. Even to this day, I have to remind people who haven't seen it for ages just how satirical and comedic it is, and how it mix that with some of the most brutal violence you're ever going to see, especially if you watch the extended cut. I mean, and that's a funny point, is the extended cut, or rather where they put the bits back that were cut out initially, and one of them is when Ed 209 blows the guy away in the office, he malfunctions, and he blows him away, and in the cut version they cut out a lot of it, so he blows him away, he gets blown away, and then it all comes down, and you hear this voice yell out, somebody called a paramedic. Now in the proper cut, in the extended cut, it's like about 20 seconds of this guy getting ripped to shreds by 09's machine guns, and someone like he is he's mincemeat, and then when the guy then yells out, someone called a paramedic, it's funny. because he's just been absolutely ripped to shreds. And and Paul Verhoeven was Paul Verhoeven is such a hero of mine, because he is a balls to the walls filmmaker, and God bless him. And he is, and every movie he makes to me is always worth a watch, because he never holds back. He never phones it in. He never phones it in. And I love him for it. It's great.
Should we go on to your number 2?
Sure. Okay. Right. So, number 2 is now. Whenever people ask me what is my favorite action movie, this is the movie I usually say. because
Okay.
it is only because my number one movie is my favorite movie of all time. So
Okay.
you don't think of it as an action movie. So
All right.
usually when people say, "What do you think the greatest action movie ever made is?" Brad, I say, for me, without a doubt, it's James Cameron's True Lies.
Okay. Why True Lies?
Oh my God, where to begin?
It. I don't know, but ironically, I've never seen it.
Oh, you've
but
never
I know
seen True Lies?
No, I'll get round to it. But that with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yes,
yeah,
it is. It is after True Lies, action movies could never top True Lies to me. Like it is right on the edge of where of how ludicrous you could take things and still stay and still be an engaging movie. You know, after True Lies, and people try to outdo True Lies, it just gets too silly. I mean, True Lies is very silly, but True Lies is a comedy as well, and it's it's an out and out comedy. And again, to this day, when I show it to people who've never seen it, I showed it to my niece and nephew, never seen it. I showed it to my girlfriend, who I think she'd seen it ages ago, but never watched it like properly. That everyone is in hysterics watching this movie. It is, I think, one of the funniest films ever made. And Bill Paxton is just a master class of a comedy character in this movie. And he's incredible, and he I don't know what I want to say because I don't want to spoil it for you if you've never seen it.
Hang on a minute, is True Lies is Arnold Schwarzenegger basically playing an action hero? Is it that one?
No, he's not Last Action Hero.
Action hero, I'm thinking.
But he's basically he's playing a super spy. Who's masquerading as a computer salesman, and his family don't know he's a spy out there saving the world. It's based on a French movie, and so it's kind of that Cameron sort of rewrote and made him, and basically just explored it. What was it? What if this scenario was in a massive American action movie? And so, but the joke is Arnold Schwarzenegger. How does he masquerade as a boring computer salesman? That's your joke right off the bat. And Arnie, and the thing, and Arnie, who we know can be terrible as an actor in loads of things, but there's just a handful of directors.
But he knows that too, I think, doesn't he?
Absolutely.
Up to that,
because I believe that he was the one that said it. There's a handful of directors that know how to use me. And and James Cameron being one of them, and the ludicrousness of the scenario is what works with Arnie in this. He's got a Tom Arnold in his best role he's ever done as his sidekick, and he's a constant delight of one-liners, and you've got the most ridiculous scenarios going on, and you've just got action that is off the charts. I mean, it is off the charts. My favorite action scene of all time is on the Miami Causeway, the whole road, and you watch that, and they've got real Harrier jump jets flying around, and real action happening on it. But they've also got a miniature of the causeway, and you can't tell what is a miniature, what isn't. It's the way they cut it all together is mind blowing. And there's this one moment in it, and this hopefully wouldn't spoil it too much, but where the Harrier jump jets coming in, and you got the terrorists driving along in their cars, and they fire the 4 missiles from the Harrier jump jets. They all come around to the causeway, and the car, and they keep missing the car, like just behind it. But then the 4th one, boom, gets it right in front, and up you go. And I, in the cinema, I leapt out of my seat. I couldn't stop myself. It was like an involuntary reaction. The timing was just so good that I couldn't help myself. Honestly, I think anyone that hasn't seen True Lies for a long time, or I remember they showed it at Prince Charles a few years ago, and again I took some people to see it, and the entire cinema was in tears of laughter through the whole movie.
Really?
It really is a genuinely funny film with
I'll give it
the
a
most
watch.
incredible action that you've ever seen, and to have an entire the end battle sequences on a Harrier jump jet,
Yeah.
flying over Miami Tower block. It's insanity, but it's beyond epic, and the action is just fantastic. Loads of James Bond nods, loads of because he's basically an American James Bond, and it was, because it came out at a time when you had that lull in the James Bond franchise, where they were making between License to Kill and Goldeneye, and because James Bond, again, I mean that's an action genre, right? But it's James Bond, and I haven't even considered putting any James Bond movies.
No. It is funny.
Yeah, but I do remember when True Lies came out, everyone was like, because they knew they were gearing up to do another Bond, and everyone I would talk to, everyone was like, I don't know how Bond is going to come anywhere near that. I mean, it was just insane, and it never has. I mean, and I loved Goldeneye, and I've loved a lot of the Bond movies afterwards, but True Lies just basically wipes the floor with everyone when it comes to action. It's literally like mic drop. To me, it's James Cameron's action mic drop, and he has nothing more to prove. See you later. And
I guess there's an element of espionage to it as well, isn't there? Like you were saying.
There is, because they are spies, but it's a very basic. It's a basic sort of terrorist plot.
Okay.
And, I mean, it's the kind of thing like because they were thinking of doing a sequel, but then after 9/11, they were like, no way. It's a kind of movie that for a little while after 9/11, people, you shouldn't bring it up. But I, because I was like, no, come on, this is not real. This is a movie.
Exactly.
But it was but in time now, and look, it's Jamie Lee Curtis she's phenomenal in it. And
she's his wife, and then she ends up being like working with him, and she's
exactly, and her transformation is brilliant. The way she does that, and it's there's a pretty sort of famous scene that is quite controversial.
Yeah,
but
I know what you're talking about.
But it is it's fun. It's just fun.
It is. Did that film come out before or after the what is it? Because you were saying James Bond, so that was the English equivalent of Spy. But then the American Spy is famously, is it Ryan? Who's been in like Harrison Ford played him, and then there've been other characters.
Jack Ryan. Yeah,
Jack Ryan. He's like sort of kind of like the American James Bond, isn't he?
Yeah, well, he was. Yeah, I mean, you had the two. So you had Clear and Present Danger and Patriot Games.
That's it. The Patriot Games, isn't it?
Yeah, they were early 90s. I think they had both come out by then. I'd have to check. True Lies was 94. I know that.
Okay.
And I think they come out just a little bit earlier. But yeah, that's it. But they're very different. The Jack Ryan movies are very, they're serious, really. They're
but I was going to say, I guess this one was more of a parody of that genre, in a way.
Exactly. James Bond was more. James Bond was I mean, they would go. What I love about the James Bond franchise is that they're different, and I embraced all. I embraced the Connery. I embraced the Moore. I'm particularly fond of Dalton. I think he's very underrated, and I embraced the Brosnan. I like them changing it up, and I like the serious Bonds, and I like my favorite Bond movie is From Russia with Love. My second favorite Bond movie is The Spy Who Loved Me. So a serious espionage one, and one where a guy wants to annihilate the world and live under the sea. I love it all, and so so I love all that stuff. But True Lies is an out and out comedy and an out and out over the top action movie comedy. it works almost like it's like the movie that you mentioned, Last Action Hero, which was directed by Josh McTiernan, who did Die Hard. That nearly could have been like if Last Action Hero to me just I enjoy Last Action Hero a lot, and there's a lot about it I really do like, and I think Charles Dance is flipping brilliant in it. But it doesn't quite work. It just doesn't quite work. If Last Action Hero had been the movie, it could have been it would have been True Lies. It would have been that in terms of kind of parodying how over the top the action is, but with the stakes still feeling real. And it's I don't know what to say. I don't want to. If you do yourself a favor, get True Lies.
I'll do it for you.
I think it's wonderful.
It's on my to watch list for sure.
Absolutely.
Is there anything else you want to say about it before you crack on to number 2? Was it number 2?
No, just everyone who's never seen it should see it.
I'll watch it for sure.
That was number 2.
Okay. So now we're going on to
like I said, I would always class True Lies as my favorite action movie purely because my number 1 movie transcends genre. To me, it's just one of the greatest movies ever made.
What is it? Hang on, do a drum roll.
It's Raiders of the Lost Ark. Come on.
Okay. Why Raiders of the Lost Ark?
Because it's one of the greatest movies ever made. It's if you were to distill cinema into one movie, it would be Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's just.
I forget which one that is because there've been a few. Is that the one with the big ball that goes rolling after?
Raiders of the Lost Ark has the big ball at the beginning. So Raiders, again, it's like okay. So
it's been years. I saw it as a kid, and I remember thinking actually there are bits were kind of a bit scary as a kid, and then but it was so much fun, and that was Sean Connery as well, wasn't it, as his dad?
No, that's the third one, the Last Crusade.
Oh, that's the third one. Okay.
Yeah,
I get confused sometimes, but I remember, the big, the big, what do you call it? The ball,
the big ball, which a lot of people get confused because the ball comes down and he could just stand under it and wait for it to go by, but it's like no, that ball, it's not actually a ball. It's going to block off the tunnel. And he's going to keep him there forever. So he's got to outrun that ball. It's great.
Yeah.
But it's
terrifying.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, but it's just to me, it's a master filmmaker at the top of his class with one of the greatest script writers doing the script, and it's got one of the best old school cinematographers doing DPing the movie. And of course, probably the greatest film composer of all time, giving us just one of the greatest scores of all time. And it's just cinema. It's just pure
amazing
cinema. Yeah, and so and again, it's one of those things. It's like everyone's got to imagine that this hadn't, even though it's a total throwback to the 1930s. Serials, total throwback to that, and they've stolen a lot for the look of Indy and a lot of the stuff. He's based on a lot of the old school action heroes, and there's definitely a Bogart in there, and there's definitely a lot of borrowing for Indy. But at the time, the Indiana Jones is a cliche now, and all those movies. That first movie, Raiders of the Lost Ark. When that starts and you literally the opening sequence with one of the greatest reveals of a person of all time, when Harrison Ford steps out of the light and steps out of the shadows and reveals himself, and then they go and suddenly and again you get basically he's set up as this badass in the first sort of 3 minutes of the film, where you don't see his face and all that. Someone tries to kill him, he takes him out. He's doing all that. He's got all the traps sorted. He knows not to go in the light and does all this stuff. And then he goes up, and the music builds. He goes up to the idol, and he's about, and he's checking out the sand and he's altering the weight. He gets it and he does it, and it goes wrong. And from then on, Indy is rubbish. He's not that good, and it's like going back to what I said. That the hero that really doesn't want to be there. For me, Indiana Jones is the ultimate example of that. The Ray Harrison Ford plays him is,
and he's so kind of grumpy as well, isn't he? Like
absolutely, yeah. Like the moment where he's just done this whole fight on this plane, on the flying wing plane, and all that, and then Sulla finds him. He goes, it's being loaded onto trucks. Like truck, what truck? And then he goes, right, you got to get us a boat back to England somehow. He goes, I'm going to go after that truck. And he goes, how are you going to go after the truck? Goes, I don't know. I'm making this up as I go along. To me, that's brilliant. He doesn't know what he's doing. Yeah. Making this up as I go along is one of my favourite lines in history. That, along with "It's not the years, honey, it's the mileage," which is just one of the best lines of all time. But
which one is the one where he's in a blimp with the Nazis and he's beating them up? Which one is that?
That's The Last Crusade with Sean Connery.
Oh, okay. And I just remember seeing a clip where the woman next to him, or man, whoever, is looking at him, and he goes, "They didn't pay their ticket," or something like that. I can't remember.
He disguised himself as the ticket man. He's asking people for tickets as the Nazis are coming in, and he lowers the paper and finds Sean Connery, and then he turns around and Harrison Ford is there, punches him, throws him out, and then just turns around and goes, "No ticket."
That's it. That's
brilliant.
I thought that was genius.
Brilliant, yeah. We are running, less than a minute.
Okay. Oh no! So I guess it's time to wrap it up then.
Yeah, I'm afraid so. But I could talk about Raiders forever. There's so many amazing things in it. But it's the truck chase is one of the greatest action sequences of all time. And
well, we'll have to have you back. Have you back?
Well, there you go. Yeah, have me back for an Indiana Jones special.
Yeah. Not much, but you'd have to help me along the way.
Yeah, no, I could talk about it forever. You wouldn't need to contribute at all.
All right. Well, thank you, Brad, for coming on. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
And let's talk soon.